The oath. The air was thick with smoke. Broken machines sparked on the ground. Heat waves moved like ghosts over the ruined battlefield. Nothing moved at first. Then, one figure rose from the wreckage. Captain Jalen coughed, pressing a hand to his side. His suit was torn, his visor cracked. He looked around, unsure if he was still alive. The last thing he remembered was the ground shaking, and the roar of the Orkai warlord charging at him. The battle had started as a suicide mission. Jalen was supposed to buy time for the escape ships. Everyone said the Orkai warlord was unbeatable. 7 feet tall, armor like stone, and a blade that could cut through tanks. Nobody thought a human could stop him. But somehow, Jalen had. He stepped over a broken drone, still buzzing weakly, and saw the body lying ahead. The warlord was down, really down. The huge alien lay on his back, dark blood pooling beneath him. His weapon was gone. His breathing had stopped. Jalen didn't know how it had happened. His plan was simple: distract the warlord with fake signals, loop his drones behind him, and use a sonic trap to mess with his senses. He didn't expect it to work, but it had. The trap stunned the warlord for just long enough. Jalen pulled the emergency plasma knife from his boot and struck blindly. Now the warlord was dead. He stood there, stunned, trying to understand what he had done. But then movement to his left. Fast, smooth, dangerous. A figure stepped out of the smoke. She was tall, even for an orkai, but thinner, faster. Her armor was sharp and clean. Her eyes glowed faintly. In her hand, she held a long red blade, humming softly. She was not like the others. Jalen raised his hands, even though he knew it wouldn't help. His voice came out hoarse. "You want revenge." The figure did not speak at first. Instead, she walked past him and knelt beside the fallen warlord. She looked at his face, not with sadness, but with respect. Then she spoke. Her voice was calm, not angry, not afraid. "He is gone," she said. "His strength has ended." Jalen didn't know what to say. He expected her to kill him, or at least threaten him. But instead she stood slowly, wiped her blade on the grass, and turned to face him. "You are the one who defeated him." I guess," Jalen said. "Then I follow you," she said. He blinked. "What?" "I am Thes, 3rd Blade of the Orkai Legion. I swore my life to the strongest." "Now, that is you." Jalen looked around, half expecting someone to laugh, or to wake up from a strange dream. But this was real. Too real. "I don't think you understand," he said. "I didn't beat him in a fair fight. I tricked him. I used tech, sound loops, fake signals. Strategy is strength," Thes replied. "The method does not matter, only the result, and the result is this. He is dead. You are not." Jalen took a shaky step back. "Listen, I'm not a warlord. I'm a cargo pilot. I mostly smuggle water to dead moons. I don't want a warrior, or a follower." Thes tilted her head, like a predator studying something new. "You did not want to win either. But you did. I saw it. Now your life is tied to mine." Jalen sighed. "Great." She followed him as he walked back toward the ship. Every few steps, he looked over his shoulder, and there she was. Quiet. Steady. Always watching. When they reached his small cargo ship, she didn't ask for permission. She stepped inside like she belonged. She sat near the back, checked her weapons, and waited. "Do you even sleep?" Jalen asked. "When needed," she said. "And what now?" "You just protect me. Until a stronger one comes," Thes said. "Then I will choose again." He sat down across from her, rubbing his forehead. "You're serious about this?" "I do not joke," Thes said. "Joking is weakness." Jalen laughed, even though he didn't feel like it. "You're going to hate being around humans." For a moment, Thes said nothing. Then she looked at him, eyes sharp and cold. I already understand one thing about your kind, she said. You are small, soft, and full of fear, but somehow you survive, again and again. And that makes you dangerous. Jalen didn't reply. He couldn't. He just leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. Outside, the sky turned red as the sun began to set. The war was over, but something else had begun. In silence, Thess watched him, not as a guard, not as a servant, but as a warrior waiting to see what kind of leader she had chosen. Shadows of the Pact. The ship hummed as it drifted through the dark between systems, old engines coughing every few hours like the vessel itself was tired of flying. Inside, the lights flickered, never fully bright, casting long shadows on the metal walls. Captain Jalen sat in the cockpit, eyes half closed, fingers tapping on a worn-out control screen that hadn't updated since the war ended. Behind him, she was still there. Thess, always there. She hadn't spoken much in the last 2 days, but her presence was heavy, like a weight pressing down on the air. She cleaned her blade every morning, sharpened it even though it didn't need it, and sat in silence like a statue carved from cold stone. Jalen wasn't used to company. Not like this. Not someone who watched his every move without a word. He tried talking at first, joking, even offering her food, but Thess only tilted her head, gave short answers, and returned to her quiet. There was something about her that made the ship feel smaller, like she didn't belong on a cargo runner, like the walls might not hold her in if she decided to leave. Jalen didn't understand why she kept following him. He had no real power, no army, no command. He carried low-grade supplies to forgotten moons and half-dead stations. There was nothing strong about that. And yet Thess had made her choice. She had seen something in that fight, something Jalen still couldn't explain. He had won, yes, but barely. It didn't feel like strength. It felt like survival. But to her, it meant everything. And now she followed him, not out of kindness, not out of need, but because of her code. Strength must be followed. She said those words like they were law. And maybe, to her people, they were. On the third night, Jalen finally asked. They were parked in the orbit of a cold rock called Belcher's 8, waiting to unload crates of atmosphere recyclers. He leaned against the wall across from her, arms folded, voice low. "Why do you really follow me?" he asked. "There's more to it, isn't there?" Thess didn't answer right away. She looked at him like she was weighing the question itself. Then, slowly, she set her blade down beside her and spoke. "I was trained from childhood to serve the strongest, not to question, not to think, only to observe, measure, and choose." Her voice was calm but distant, like she was remembering something far away. "Our kind does not care for politics or peace. We care only for the chain. The strongest lead. The rest follow. It keeps us sharp. It keeps us alive." Jalen nodded, trying to understand. "So that's it. I won. So now you follow." Thess gave a small, slow nod. "But strength takes many forms," she added. "My warlord had brute power. You used something different. Something. Unclear. I watched the recordings. You saw things others missed. You moved without fear. Even when you should have died, you did not panic." Jalen chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I was definitely panicking," he said. Thess looked at him with eyes that didn't blink. "Then you hide it well. That is another form of strength." They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the stars passed by, cold and silent. Jalen had never felt important before. He'd spent years flying under the radar, dodging taxes, dealing with low-level smugglers, and trading parts for food. Now he had a warrior who could kill a dozen men in seconds sitting on his floor, sharpening her blade like she was waiting for the next war. He didn't know what she wanted from him. But more than that, he didn't know what the galaxy would want from him next. Later that night, he woke to the sound of Thess speaking softly into a small black device. Her voice was in a language he didn't recognize, sharp, ancient, full of deep tones and sudden clicks. He didn't interrupt. He just listened from his bunk, eyes open in the dark. She wasn't reporting. She was remembering. Maybe praying. Maybe confessing. Whatever it was, it didn't sound like loyalty. It sounded like doubt. The next morning, they received a message from the Central Union Trade Hub. Not a normal job. Not a delivery. Something else. Classified. High risk. Too much money for a simple run. Jalen frowned at the details. He didn't trust it. But Tess only looked at the screen, nodded once, and said, "Accept it." Jalen raised a brow. "Why?" She looked at him, and for the first time, there was something new in her expression. Not just focus. Not just duty. Curiosity. "Because someone wants to test your strength," she said. "And I want to see how far it goes." The weapon that wasn't the job looked simple on the surface. Dock at the outer ring of Station Cryon 6. Pick up a sealed crate. No scans. No questions. No paperwork. Too easy, Jalen thought, which usually meant too dangerous. Tess didn't speak much as they approached the station, her eyes scanning the radar, her hand resting casually on the handle of her blade. She had the stillness of someone always ready to move. Jalen had grown used to her silence, but lately that quiet felt heavier, like she was waiting for something, watching not just the stars, but him. She studied the way he made decisions, how long he hesitated before choosing a flight path, how fast he reacted when a warning light blinked red, how he looked at the sealed crate they were ordered to carry but didn't open. She watched everything. Not like a bodyguard, but like a hunter tracking prey she didn't yet understand. The crate was cold. No sound from inside, no sign of life. Just a strange, low hum like an engine running somewhere far away. Jalen wanted to ask what was in it, but the message had been clear. Don't. Curiosity killed smugglers faster than plasma bolts. Still, the silence around that crate, it wasn't normal. Tess said nothing about it, but Jalen saw the way her eyes narrowed when she stood near it. She didn't fear it, but she didn't trust it either. They left Cryon 6 without trouble, but the quiet didn't follow them. Within hours of undocking, a signal pinged on the edge of their system. A patrol ship, unregistered, small, fast, built for interception, and armed. Jalen cursed under his breath, rerouting their flight path, but the ship matched every move. No broadcast, no request to dock. It didn't want to talk. It wanted the crate, or maybe it wanted him. Tess moved to the turret without a word. Her body moved like water, smooth and silent, but her eyes were sharp, locked on the ship as it closed the distance. The fight didn't last long. Tess didn't miss. 3 well-placed shots, and the patrol ship spun off into darkness, venting fire from a ruptured side panel. They didn't stay to watch it burn. Later, as they sat in the mess, drinking reheated coffee that tasted more like metal than anything else, Tess finally asked him something he didn't expect. "How did you know the sonic trap would work on the warlord?" She didn't look at him when she asked, just stared out the small window, watching stars crawl by. Jalen hesitated, fingers wrapped around his mug. "I didn't," he said. "Not for sure." Tess turned to face him. "But you used it anyway." He nodded slowly. "I read an old report. Back during the siege of Arden 4, some orkai were affected by certain sound frequencies, made them disoriented, violent, confused. Most soldiers never read that far back. But I figured, if it worked once," he shrugged, "worth a shot." Tess tilted her head. "You read enemy psychology reports from decades ago." Jalen gave a small smile. "I've got time on these long flights." Her eyes narrowed, and for a long moment, she said nothing. Then, softly, she asked the question he'd been waiting for. Was it really the sonic trap that killed him? Jalen's smile faded. He looked down at his drink, then out the same window she'd stared through. "No," he said finally. "It slowed him, made him stumble, but it didn't kill him." Tessa's voice lowered. "Then what did?" Jalen's answer came quietly. "He saw something. In my eyes. I don't know what. Maybe it reminded him of something. Maybe he hesitated. He looked back at her, and that was enough. Fess sat back, blade forgotten at her side. She didn't like this. It didn't make sense to her. Orkai warriors didn't hesitate. They didn't feel pity or confusion. They fought. They won. They died. Jalen had faced one of the strongest warlords in the quadrant, and the final blow hadn't come from skill or strength, but from something else. Something soft. Something human. It unsettled her. That night, when Jalen slept, Fess stood outside the sealed crate. Her hand hovered above it, not touching, just sensing. The hum was louder now. She closed her eyes and let the sound run through her, deep into her bones. There was something inside. Not a weapon, not a bomb. Something alive, but not in the way most things were. She opened her eyes, walked away, and returned to her post by the cockpit. When Jalen woke up, he found her already awake, sitting in the co-pilot's seat. "We are being watched," she said without turning. "Whoever sent that crate, they want more than delivery. They want to see what you do next." Jalen frowned. "You think it's a test?" "No," she said. "I think it's a warning." He didn't ask more. He didn't want to. But something cold settled in his stomach as he checked the nav map. The next job was already waiting. And this time, the name on the request wasn't just some trader or black market dealer. It was the Syndicate. And they never paid well without a reason. Hunted by the Syndicate, they didn't land at the main port on Calderis Prime. That would have been suicide. Instead, Jalen brought the ship down on the far side of the junk moon, a frozen, rust-colored rock that orbited just close enough to give off a weak comm signal, but too far for anyone to care about its quiet descent. The coordinates had come directly from the Syndicate, buried inside a job request that didn't list a sender. Jalen knew better than to say no. Nobody said no to the Syndicate, and kept flying. They had their hands in every black market, every off-the-record shipping lane, every underpaid mercenary crew stretching from the core systems to the edges of known space. If the Syndicate wanted something moved, you moved it. And if they were watching you, you kept your head down and prayed they weren't planning to erase you after. Inside the ship, Fess had already started to prepare. She had taken apart her blade, cleaned every part, sharpened the edges so precisely it could cut air. She wasn't nervous. Fess didn't do nervous. But Jalen noticed how she moved slower than usual, how she kept glancing at the sealed crate in the cargo hold as if it had started whispering in her sleep. She didn't trust it. Not the crate, not the Syndicate, not even the silence between star systems. And most of all, she didn't trust whatever it was that Jalen wasn't telling her. The meeting spot was nothing more than a broken mining station, half buried under snow and time. They approached from the west slope, boots crunching over frost and gravel. Jalen wore his patched-up flight jacket, hands deep in his pockets. Fess walked beside him like a shadow made of war. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Not here. Inside, 4 Syndicate reps waited in what used to be a control room. The walls were lined with old cables and burnt-out panels. No names were exchanged. Syndicate people didn't do names. One of them, a woman with silver eyes and a smile like a scalpel, motioned for Jalen to come forward. The others stood back, guns at their hips but not drawn. Yet. "You delivered something recently," Silver Eyes said. "Crate from Cryon 6. Jalen nodded. "Paid to move it. That's all." "You opened it." "Was told not to." "Did you want to?" Jalen paused. "Every minute." She smiled wider. "That's what makes you interesting." She stepped closer. "Do you know what was in that crate?" Jalen didn't answer. He didn't need to. Fess shifted slightly behind him, eyes flicking between the guards and the woman. She didn't like this room. Too many doors, too few rules. It wasn't tech, the woman said. It wasn't cargo. It was a key to something old, something buried before humans ever reached the stars. And you were chosen to carry it. I don't remember volunteering. Jalen muttered. You didn't, she said, but someone saw you. Saw what you did on Meraxis Ridge. No human should have survived that fight. And yet you did. And not just survived. You won. No implants. No support. Just instinct. She stepped even closer now, her voice dropping. And that's what we're afraid of. Thess stepped forward, her voice cold and clear. He used planning. He used knowledge. There is no shame in survival. No, Silver Eyes said, there isn't. But your people don't follow survivors. They follow killers. So tell me, why are you following him? The room fell quiet. Jalen didn't move. Thess stood still for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter than Jalen had ever heard it. Because he does not kill to prove strength. He kills to protect weakness. The woman laughed, soft and sharp. How noble, she said, but nobility doesn't last long in our part of the galaxy. She gestured to the guards. We're taking the crate. And we're taking him. He knows too much now. Guns raised. Before the first shot was fired, Thess moved. She didn't need orders. She didn't need time. Her blade flashed once, twice, 3 times. The room lit with sparks and screams. Jalen dove behind a console as plasma fire cut through the air. He could barely track her movements. She wasn't just fighting. She was dancing, every step calculated, every strike final. Within 30 seconds, the fight was over. The woman with silver eyes was gone, bleeding out on the cold floor. Only silence remained, broken by the hum of broken machinery. Jalen stood slowly, breathing hard. Thess wiped blood from her blade and sheathed it. We need to go, she said. They're going to come after us, Jalen said. Thess nodded. Yes, they will. And next time, they will send more. They ran back to the ship, the crate still sealed in the hold, but now humming louder, like it had felt the chaos, and was waking up. Jalen didn't ask what it was. He didn't want to know. Not yet. But as the engines roared to life, and the junk moon shrank behind them, Thess sat in the co-pilot seat, looking out into the dark, her hands resting on her knees, and for the first time since she had sworn herself to him, she whispered something under her breath that Jalen couldn't hear. It wasn't a war prayer. It was a question. And for a warrior raised to serve only strength, that was the beginning of something dangerous. Betrayal on Calyx 9. Calyx 9 was a planet made of glass and lies. Its towers stretched high into the sky, covered in shimmering panels that caught every drop of sunlight and reflected nothing real, just color, motion, and a kind of beauty that made it easy to forget where you were. It was a place where money spoke louder than truth, where peace was rented by the hour, and where the powerful came to pretend they weren't the ones making everything worse. Jalen hated it immediately. Too clean, too quiet, too many eyes. The invitation had come disguised as an apology from the syndicate, an offer to discuss terms, smooth over misunderstandings, even offer new contracts. Jalen wasn't stupid. He didn't believe in clean getaways or sudden kindness. But the money was real, and the route they gave him passed through some of the most secure space in the quadrant. Maybe they wanted something. Maybe they wanted to end what they'd started. Either way, Jalen figured it was better to show up than to hide. Hiding made you a target. Showing up made you a problem. Thess didn't speak much as the ship entered the upper atmosphere, but Jalen could feel her tension in the way she checked her gear 3 times instead of once. Her blade sat on her hip, charged and ready, but she also carried a smaller one now. A silent blade, meant for quiet kills. She didn't look at Jalen as they walked down the landing ramp, but she stayed close, always half a step behind him, her eyes sweeping every shadow, every rooftop, every smile that lasted too long. The meeting was scheduled in a glass tower that stood like a needle in the heart of the city, surrounded by dancing holograms and drifting scent clouds designed to keep visitors relaxed. It didn't work on either of them. Inside, the lift took them up 57 floors without stopping, the air too clean, and the silence too heavy. At the top, a lounge waited. Soft chairs, warm lighting, drinks on silver trays. 3 men sat at the far end of the room, dressed in expensive suits, their hands empty, their faces pleasant. Jalen didn't know them, but they knew him. The man in the center stood as they approached, arms open. "Captain Jalen, thank you for coming. And Thess, of the Orkai. Your reputation precedes you." Thess didn't blink. She stood like a weapon on standby, silent and still. Jalen offered a short nod. "You wanted to talk. Talk." The man smiled, motioning to the chairs. "We've seen what you can do. That battle on Meraxis, the courier run from Cryon 6, your handling of our people on Calderis." Jalen didn't sit. "You mean the people who tried to kidnap me?" "Misunderstandings," the man said smoothly. "But that's behind us now. What matters is what's ahead." He gestured to a small cube on the table. "We want you to deliver something new. No traps, no lies. In return, you get protection, credits, and truth." Jalen looked at the cube. He didn't move toward it. "What's in it?" "Answers," the man said. "About the crate. About why you survived when no one else could. About what you really are." The word hung in the air like smoke. Thess shifted, barely noticeable, but Jalen saw it. A flicker of doubt, of interest. He didn't like it. Not because he didn't want answers, but because he didn't trust the people offering them. Jalen looked the man in the eye. "And what do you get?" "Insurance," the man replied. "The Syndicate isn't afraid of weapons. We're afraid of what can't be predicted. And you, Captain, you're unpredictable." Then the lights cut out. For a moment, nothing but darkness. Then flashing red. Alarms. Movement. Jalen heard the snap of Thess's blade before his eyes adjusted. The 3 men were already gone, replaced by shadows in armor, rifles raised, stepping from hidden panels. It was never a meeting. It was an execution. The first shot hit the wall near Jalen's head as he dove behind the table. Thess moved like lightning, cutting 2 down before their guns could reset. But there were more. Too many. They were prepared this time, not just with firepower, but with timing. As Jalen dragged himself across the slick glass floor, a shockwave hit him from behind. Everything went white, then numb. When his vision returned, he saw Thess on one knee, breathing hard, her blade flickering from damage. One of the soldiers stepped forward, aiming at her. Jalen grabbed the nearest tray, threw it, knocked the shot off course. The second blast hit him square in the chest and sent him tumbling back. He woke later, in his ship, bandaged, alive. The station was gone, blown apart. The Syndicate blamed a rebel cell. No proof, no names. And Thess, she sat across from him, staring not at him, but at her own hands. They were shaking, just slightly. "You should have let them take me," Jalen said, his voice raw. "I do not follow cowards," she said, almost too quickly. But he saw it in her face. The crack, the question. What if strength wasn't enough? What if loyalty needed something else, something she didn't have a name for yet? And as the stars passed silently outside the ship, Thess sat alone in the dark, wondering if the strongest thing she had ever done was refuse to leave him behind. The human weapon. They drifted in deep space for 3 days after Kelix 9, hiding between quiet moons and forgotten trade lanes where no one bothered to look. The ship barely held together, patched in places with emergency welds and coolant hoses wrapped in tape, but it flew. Jalen didn't speak much. The burns across his chest ached with every movement, and the painkillers dulled not just his nerves, but also the part of him that had been running on fear. Thess moved through the ship like a ghost, checking systems, cleaning her weapons, avoiding his eyes. Something had changed between them. Something small but sharp, like a crack forming deep inside a wall. Jalen knew it wasn't just the ambush. It wasn't just the lies from the Syndicate or the traps hidden inside polite smiles. It was the moment he stood up for her. Not with a weapon, not with strength, but by simply refusing to run. And that wasn't a kind of loyalty Tess had been taught to understand. On the fourth day, Jalen opened the crate. No ceremony, no backup, just a slow turn of the lock and the hiss of sealed air spilling into the cargo hold. Tess arrived seconds later, blade in hand, too late to stop him, but early enough to bear witness. Inside the crate was no bomb, no artifact, no alien tech. Instead, it held a pod, a stasis chamber, its surface lined with frost, faint lights blinking in slow rhythm. And inside the pod, floating in pale blue fluid, was a child. Human, maybe 8 years old, eyes closed, hair dark and long. No scars, no marks, just stillness, like sleep. Jalen stepped back, breath caught in his throat, and Tess stared, frozen for once by something she didn't know how to fight. There was a tablet attached to the inside wall. Jalen pulled it free, tapped the screen, and let the message play. It wasn't a voice recording. It was a memory stream, a direct injection of thoughts, compressed and burned into a visual feed. He watched it all. Flashes of cold labs, experiments buried beneath mountains, whispers of a project called Helix Dawn, a secret initiative abandoned years ago when the human governments realized they could not control what they had created. Not a weapon, not truly. Something else, something born from the idea that strength wasn't always about destruction. Sometimes the most powerful force was the ability to change others, not with fear, not with force, but with empathy. The child inside the pod wasn't normal. Born in a lab, designed through gene layering and cognitive enhancement, she could tap into emotion on a level deeper than language. Her brain lit up in response to pain, not her own, but others. She could feel what they felt, reflect it, alter it. Early tests showed that animals, even violent ones, calmed when near her. Soldiers hesitated. Enemies dropped weapons. The project was shut down when the first general wept in front of her and couldn't explain why. Too dangerous, they said. Too unpredictable. Jalen put the tablet down, staring at the child inside the pod. Tess said nothing. For a long time, she just stood there, her eyes locked on the small figure floating in silence. "You carried this," she said finally, her voice lower than usual. "You knew." Jalen nodded slowly. "Not everything, but I had a feeling. That's why they wanted me dead. Not because I won the fight. Because I was seen carrying this crate and not failing." Tess looked at him, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. "You used this, child." Jalen shook his head. "No, I protected her. I didn't even open it until now. Maybe she reached out somehow, through the pod. Maybe she triggered something in that warlord. Something buried too deep for me to see." He leaned against the wall, tired. "Or maybe I just got lucky." "No," Tess said. "You don't believe in luck." They stood in silence, listening to the hum of the pod and the ship's slow heartbeat. Then Tess did something she had never done before. She sat down. Not to rest, not to meditate, but to simply be still. The child had not moved, not stirred, but Tess kept looking at her as if expecting something to shift, something impossible to happen. And then, slowly, it did. A flicker of light inside the pod. A pulse. The child's eyes opened, just for a moment. They glowed faintly, not like a machine, but like a star reflected in water. And in that moment, Tess felt something she had never known before. Not fear, not power, not command. Understanding. Memories that weren't hers rose in her chest. Grief, sorrow, joy. Images of families long lost. Battles never fought, faces smiling through pain. And somewhere, buried deep beneath it all, a feeling she had no word for. Mercy. She looked at Jalen, her voice almost a whisper. "This is your strength," she said. "Not what you carry. Not what you fight. But what you protect. Jalen nodded once. And now, they know I still have her. Thess stood. Her blade hummed as it came to life. Then let them come. The Vauri made the final transmission, came without sound, without name, without threat. Just a set of coordinates drifting in space like a forgotten memory, pulled from the edge of a dying star system where no beacon should have worked, and yet it did. Jalen watched the numbers on the screen for a long time, hands resting on the console, face calm, but hollowed out by everything that had come before. He didn't speak right away, didn't even look at Thess. The child in the pod still slept in her soft blue light, untouched by time, unchanged by the galaxy that now bent itself around her existence. She had not spoken, not cried, not reached out again since the moment her eyes opened. But something in her had changed Thess forever. The warrior who once measured her life in blood and strength now watched over the child like she was more than precious, like she was proof of something no blade could earn. And when the coordinates came in, Thess didn't question where they led. She already knew. The Syndicate was calling. And this time, it wasn't a trap. It was an end. They reached the edge of the system in silence, the ship's old hull rattling as they dropped out of jump near a black asteroid station floating in the void, massive and quiet, like a cathedral built for war. A single docking port opened without a signal, without a word. Jalen turned to Thess, eyes tired but steady. "Last chance to run," he said, trying to smile. "Cowards run," she replied softly, "but the wise choose their ground." He nodded. The child remained behind, deep in the ship's core, shielded, monitored, protected by every failsafe Jalen had installed over the years. If they failed, no one would find her. Not easily. Not again. Inside the station, the walls were smooth and black, metal that swallowed light and sound. The path was marked by soft red lights that pulsed like a heartbeat, guiding them forward. They walked for what felt like hours, deeper into the structure, until they reached a chamber so vast it echoed before sound had the chance to be made. There, waiting in the center, was a figure neither of them expected. Not a syndicate officer, not a fleet commander, not even a soldier. It was a man, old, pale, with eyes like frost, and a voice that seemed to exist between heartbeats. "You carry the future," he said, "but you do not understand it." Jalen stepped forward. "I understand enough. She's not a weapon. She's a mirror, and you're afraid of what you'll see when you look." The man gave a small nod. "That's true. But we're not afraid of her. We're afraid of what you'll make her believe. This galaxy doesn't run on empathy. It runs on control, fear, precision. You want to give her the chance to feel. And that makes her dangerous." Thess stepped forward now, her blade drawn but unlit, her voice low. "You fear the idea that strength can exist without violence, that leadership can come from kindness. I once believed what you believe, but I stood before her, and she showed me what power truly is." The man looked at Thess for a long time. Then his expression shifted, not anger, not fear, something like sorrow. "You were one of the sharpest edges the galaxy had," he said. "And now you are soft." Thess didn't blink. "No, now I choose who to cut for." Behind them, the air shimmered as hidden guards stepped forward from cloaked panels, 10 of them, armored and armed. Jalen sighed, pulling a small device from his jacket. "I didn't come here alone," he said. "You tracked me across 6 systems. Did you really think I wouldn't lay down countermeasures?" He pressed the button. Nothing happened at first. Then the lights flickered. The station groaned. Thess smiled. "He's not just a pilot," she said. "He's a human. And that means he plans when you don't notice." Explosions tore through the far end of the chamber, not enough to destroy the station, but enough to create panic, confusion, a single moment of hesitation. That was all Thess needed. She moved like falling fire, her blade alive in her hands, cutting through the first 2 guards before their weapons came to life. Jalen ducked behind a pillar, drawing fire, baiting their attention while the floor vibrated from sabotage charges placed hours before they docked. The room became chaos, and in the middle of it, Jalen and Tess moved like they weren't fighting to win, but to leave behind a message: you don't own what you fear. When it was over, the chamber was quiet. Smoke filled the air. Bodies lined the floor, and the old man was gone, either fled or finished. It didn't matter. Jalen stood, coughing, burned but breathing. Fess walked beside him, blood on her armor, but her eyes clear. "They'll come again," he said. She nodded. "And we'll still be here." They returned to the ship hours later, bruised, bleeding, but whole. The child was still sleeping, but as Jalen reached into the pod to check her vitals, her hand moved. Not much, just enough to touch his. Not fear, not confusion, just trust. Later, when they left the system behind and set a new course, no destination, just direction, Tess stood beside Jalen in the cockpit. She looked out at the stars, then at him. "I once swore loyalty to the strongest," she said, "but now I see, strength is not what you hold. It's what you carry when no one else will. And I no longer follow." Jalen turned to her, surprised. "Then why are you still here?" Tess looked at him, her voice soft but certain. "Because now I choose."